When I handed her the $500,000 for the surgery, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and swore she'd never betray my trust. The next day, I saw her on the local news, arm in arm with her best friend, holding a giant ceremonial check. The anchor's voice boomed. $500,000. A true angel with a heart of gold. I quietly canceled the surgery and used the last of my savings to hire a top-tier video production crew. In front of the livestream camera, I was skeletal, a walking ghost. Behind me, a large screen played her shining moment at the gala on a loop. "My wife is so kind," I whispered. "She'd rather sacrifice me to brighten the world for others." The storm of public outrage swallowed her whole. Knocked from her pedestal, she begged me to clear her name. On the day of my successful surgery, the news that she and her lover had been fired from their jobs became the #1 trending topic in the country. $500,000. Crisp, new, smelling of that unique, slightly sharp scent of ink. I carefully stacked the bundles of hundreds into the dark brown leather briefcase. Each stack was a heavy brick, building the crumbling foundation of my life. My fingers brushed against the cold metal latches, which clicked shut with a soft finality. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a dull throb that echoed the persistent, gnawing pain beneath my ribcage. "Honey," I said, looking up. My voice was raspy from fatigue and tension, like sandpaper on rough wood. "Just put in the safe. The combination is your birthday." I stressed the location, the method, each word squeezed out with a heavy weight. The contents of that briefcase were everything. The money from selling the car I'd driven for 8 years, plus every dime I could beg, borrow, and plead for from a few old friends. It wasn't just money. It was the only piece of driftwood I could cling to in a vast, dark ocean. Chloe stood under the soft, recessed lighting of our living room. The light caught the chestnut curls she spent a fortune maintaining, making them gleam like silk. She was wearing an off-white cashmere sweater that made her skin look even more luminous. And my words, her almond-shaped eyes, always so full of emotion, instantly filled with tears. She rushed over, bringing with her that familiar, faint scent of gardenia, and her soft, cool fingers landed on the back of my hand, which was hot with fever and anxiety. "Ethan," she choked out, her voice thick and trembling, every syllable soaked in what sounded like genuine sorrow. "Don't you worry. I'll keep it safe. I swear, I will never betray your trust. This is your life." The tears finally fell, rolling down her perfect cheeks and landing on my hand with a startling heat. She leaned into me, her fragility and dependence a masterfully woven net, designed to make any man's heart break, to make him willingly hand over the world. In that moment, my own heart felt like it had been seized by an icy fist, then brutally released. A sharp pain, more acute and piercing than the dull ache from my tumor, shot through the narcotic haze of my medication. The pain wasn't from her tears. The tears were probably real, shed from my suffering. The source of the pain was the subtle, almost imperceptible chill that emanated from her fingertips. It wasn't the temperature of grief, and in the depths of her watery eyes, under that shimmering surface, was a flicker of something else. Relief? Or maybe the glint of a plan perfectly executed. It was as fast as a hallucination, yet so real it sent a shiver down my spine. "Yeah, I know," I said, dropping my gaze, my throat tight and dry. I slowly, almost forcefully, pulled my hand out from under hers. The movement was stiff, distant, in a way I hadn't intended. I gestured toward the bedroom. "Put it away. Lock it up. I'm a little tired." Chloe seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second, but her face quickly crumpled back into a mask of grief. She nodded vigorously, lifting the heavy briefcase as if it were a sacred relic, and walked, with a slight, theatrical stumble, toward the bedroom. Her slender silhouette, framed by the light, seemed so delicate, so vulnerable. Each step she took felt like it was pressing an icy footprint onto my heart. The bedroom door clicked shut, sealing her away with the $500,000 and with my precarious future. Trust? I leaned back against the cold leather of the sofa and closed my eyes, a barren, frozen wasteland spreading through my mind. That word, between Chloe and me, was already fractured beyond repair. For the last 6 months, there had been the lingering scent of another man's cologne on her clothes, a ghost haunting our home. There were the frequent calls and texts from Julian Vance, project partner, that would light up her phone screen. There were the late nights, the work dinners and client meetings she'd return from, with a flush in her cheeks and a spark in her eye that she couldn't quite hide. Each time, her explanations were seamless, delivered with the perfect measure of indignation and hurt at being misunderstood. And I, exhausted from the pain, drained by the chemo, was a drowning man. I knew the current was shifting beneath me, but I had no strength to fight it, letting the whirlpool of suspicion slowly pull me under. Fatigue washed over me like a lead blanket. My numb fingers fumbled for the remote on the coffee table. The TV screen flickered to life, and the generic, upbeat theme music of the local news filled the silent living room. I slumped on the sofa, my consciousness blurring, sinking under the combined weight of medication and despair, like a stone dropping into the abyss. And we interrupt this program for breaking news. The anchor's voice suddenly sharpened with professional excitement. The Heart of the City Charity Gala is in full swing at the magnificent Grand Elysian Ballroom. Chicago's most generous philanthropists are gathered tonight for this wonderful cause. Let's go live to our reporter on the scene. The screen flashed, and the blinding glare of spotlights and a wave of noise hit me like a physical blow. Crystal chandeliers, he fractured the light into a dizzying kaleidoscope. The reporter's voice was electric. Thank you again for your incredible generosity. And now, let's witness another truly moving moment from tonight's gala. The camera zoomed in, locking onto the center of the stage. My breath caught in my throat. Chloe, my wife Chloe. She stood in the center of the spotlight, wearing a shimmering, royal blue evening gown I had never seen before. The deep V-neckline highlighted her pale throat and delicate collarbones, the skirt flowing around her like a river of stars. Her makeup was flawless, her lips curved into a perfect, demure smile of someone enjoying the adoration of the crowd. And standing beside her, pressed so close their bodies were touching, was a tall man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. Julian Vance, the project partner. His hand was resting on the small of Chloe's back, a gesture of casual, undeniable intimacy. Chloe's body was angled slightly toward him, her face radiant with a kind of girlish dependence I had never seen on her before. The host's voice boomed like thunder, tearing through the air and ripping my world apart. Let's give a huge round of applause to Ms. Chloe Evans and Mr. Julian Vance. Together, they are donating. The host's voice cracked with manufactured emotion, a high-pitched, dramatic tremor. $500,000. $500,000. $500,000. The words were 5 white-hot pokers, driving through my eardrums and deep into my brain. A roaring sound drowned out the TV, and the scene before me twisted and warped. The Grand Elysian's brilliant chandeliers shattered into a million sharp fragments of light, slicing at my retinas. On stage, guided by the host, Chloe and Julian held up a giant, gold-trimmed ceremonial check. The number, $500,000, was written in a bold, blood-red font, glittering under the lights with a cold, mocking sheen. My goodness, 500,000! The host shrieked, his voice breaking as the microphone fed back with a piercing squeal. Ms. Evans, Mr. Vance, you are as beautiful on the inside as you are on the out. You are the pride of our city, true real-life angels. Angels! Angels! The applause was a tsunami, erupting through the ballroom and crashing through the cold screen of the television to slap me across the face. The camera greedily zoomed in for a close-up of Chloe. She tilted her head, a perfect blush rising on her cheeks. She lowered her long lashes, a picture of modesty, of humble satisfaction, the curve of her smile measured to perfection. She even raised a hand to her lips in a gesture of elegant, practiced surprise. Beside her, Julian Vance stood taller, a smug smile playing on his lips, the hand on her waist tightening, as if marking his territory. The spotlight bathed them in a false, golden halo, like idols on an altar. And me, I was the forgotten, rotting sacrifice, left to decay at the foot of the shrine. The pain in my side surged, a tidal wave of agony. Nausea churned in my stomach. A thick, metallic taste rose in the back of my throat. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the mouthful of blood back down. The taste of rust filled my mouth. The taste of death. The remote slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the cold marble floor. The back popped off, and the batteries rolled out, their lonely, desperate sound echoing in the empty room. On the television, Chloe and her best friend were still soaking in the city's adoration, basking in the glory bought with the money that was supposed to save my life. The world spun and collapsed around me, its fragments sharp as knives. The glittering lights of the hotel, the false blush on Chloe's face, Julian's possessive hand, the blood-red $500,000, the host's screaming proclamation of angels. It all swirled into a cold, silent, bottomless black hole. There was no roar of anger, no hysterical accusation. My heart, which had been slowly tortured for months, became strangely calm in the absolute cold, sinking into a void of profound, silent emptiness. I didn't even bother to pick up the remote to turn it off. Let the hymns of praise continue. A grotesque funeral march, for me and for this marriage, already rotten to the core. Using the arm of the sofa for support, I summoned every last ounce of my strength and slowly, painstakingly, pulled myself to my feet. Every small movement tugged at the greedy tumor, sending ripples of excruciating pain through me. A cold sweat soaked through my thin pajamas, clinging to my skin. I hunched over a broken shell of a man and shuffled, step by agonizing step, toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The dark brown leather briefcase was lying on the floor next to the vanity, its lid wide open like a gaping, silent wound. It was empty. The soft velvet lining was marred only by the faint indentations where the stacks of cash had been. The air still held the faint, sharp smell of new money, now mingled with Chloe's gardenia perfume, creating the nauseating stench of betrayal. My eyes moved past the empty case to the vanity table. Chloe's phone lay there, screen still lit. A new text notification from Julian pulsed on the lock screen, as venomous as a snake's tongue. I didn't linger. I didn't look again. Leaning against the cold doorframe, I turned my back on the room filled with lies. The applause and the host's gushing praise from the living room TV were the only soundtrack. I shuffled to the entryway and with trembling, ice-cold fingers, pulled my own phone from the pocket of my coat, hanging on the rack. The screen's faint glow illuminated my pale, bloodless face. I went straight to my contacts and found the number for Dr. Hansen Oncology. I pressed dial. After a few rings, he answered. Hello, Dr. Hansen. My voice was unervingly calm, as placid as a frozen lake. It's me, Ethan Miller, right? The surgery. It's canceled. Dr. Hansen's shocked voice came through the line. Canceled? Ethan, this is no time for jokes. Your condition is too advanced. The money for the deposit. The money's gone. I cut him off, my tone flat, as if I were discussing something that had happened to a stranger. You don't need the details. I'm sorry to trouble you. I'll be in touch about what's next. No explanation, no pleading, not even a hint of resentment. Before he could say more, I ended the call. The screen went dark, reflecting my hollow eyes and deadened expression. The noise from the TV continued, the gala reaching its climax as the host delivered his emotional closing remarks. It's because of generous, loving entrepreneurs like Ms. Chloe Evans and Mr. Julian Vance that our community is so strong. Let's give one more round of applause for these two kind souls. Kind. The word was a poison-tipped needle, pricking a nerve deep inside my numb psyche. I slowly raised my head, my gaze traveling through the open bedroom door to the empty, gaping briefcase on the floor. The nauseating mix of ink and gardenias seemed to grow stronger. No, Chloe. Julian, you didn't just take $500,000. You lit a fire in hell. And I swear, I will not be the first one to burn. I leaned against the cold wall of the entryway, the light from the TV flickering across my body. The pain in my side was a physical monster, gnawing away at what little strength I had left. A cold sweat trickled down my temple, an icy sting against my neck. My phone screen was black, a mirror to my own dark future. Canceling the surgery. What did that mean? It meant the tumor would keep growing, feasting on the last vestiges of my life. Without that money, I couldn't even afford the next round of palliative care. Despair? No. This was something colder. The absolute void that comes after your heart has turned to stone. The gala on TV finally ended, the host signing off with a saccharine tribute to Chloe and Julian's boundless love for humanity. The sound was like a dull knife scraping against bone. Slowly, I took a deep breath. The cold air seared my lungs, triggering a violent coughing fit. I doubled over, pressing a hand hard against my side, coughing until I saw black spots, my body shaking uncontrollably. The metallic taste of blood rose again, and again I forced it down. When the coughing subsided, my chest was a cavern of fire and ice. The money was gone. My life was hanging by a thread. But I, Ethan Miller, wasn't dead yet. I pushed myself off the wall and shuffled to the old desk in the corner of the living room. A thin layer of dust coated its surface, scattered with hospital bills and bottles of painkillers. I swiped a clear space with my sleeve and pulled open the bottom drawer. It was filled with junk, a few old photo albums, mostly of Chloe and me, now a bitter irony, a stack of old magazines, a dusty wallet. I pushed it all aside, my fingers searching the very back of the drawer. They brushed against something hard and cold, a small, gray velvet pouch. I pulled it out, untied the drawstring, and emptied its contents onto the desk. A few coins, a debit card, and a folded piece of paper clattered onto the wood. The coins were pocket change. The debit card was for my last remaining bank account. I knew exactly how much was in it. The sum total of every freelance graphic design gig I'd managed to complete in between bouts of pain and exhaustion over the last 6 months. It was my funeral fund. Not much. Pathetically small compared to $500,000. I picked up the card. The cool plastic felt alien in my palm. Then I unfolded the piece of paper. On it was a single name and number written in a bold, sharp hand. Frankie, 224 XXXXXX. Frankie, my freshman year college roommate. The guy who used to run around with a battered camera, dreaming of making the next great American film. He'd since started his own production company, specializing in slick corporate videos and, well, other projects that required a special kind of documentation. We didn't talk much anymore, just a text on holidays. The last time we spoke was 6 months ago, when I was diagnosed. He called, his voice low. Ethan, man, if you need anything, you call me. I don't have much, but I got gear and I've got guys. They're yours. I dismissed it as a kind gesture then. Now, this slip of paper was the only thing I could grab onto in the abyss, a rope covered in thorns. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling slightly from cold and weakness, and punched in the numbers one by one. The line rang, each tone a hammer blow against my frayed nerves. It rang for so long, I thought no one would answer. Then, the call connected. Yeah, who's this? A gruff voice answered, laced with impatience. The background was noisy, like a film set. Frankie, I said, my voice a raw whisper. It's Ethan. Ethan Miller. There was a pause on the other end. The background noise immediately died down. Ethan. Frankie's voice shot up, full of disbelief. What the hell? You sound awful. What's wrong? I'm dying, I said calmly, as if stating a fact about the weather. The money's gone. Surgery's off. What? Frankie exploded. Holy shit. Who did it? Was it Sichel? He cut himself off, as if realizing he already knew the answer. It doesn't matter who. I interrupted, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Frankie, I need a favor. The kind of favor you owe a dying man. Silence for a few seconds, then the sound of sharp exhale. When Frankie spoke again, his voice was rough, but laced with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. Ethan, you name it. You want me to go through hell with you. I'm there. I need your crew and your best equipment, I said, each word taking a monumental effort. I need to shoot something that will end a couple of lives and maybe save my own. Save your own? Frankie asked, confused. Yeah, save my own. My eyes fell on the lonely debit card on the desk. I've got $3,785.26 to my name. It's all yours. Whatever else it costs, you can put on my tab in the afterlife. Money. Frankie scoffed on the other end, a rough, street-smart laugh. Dude, are you kidding me? You insult me. Just tell me what you need to shoot, and how. My guys and my gear can be at your place tonight. No, not yet. I breathed, forcing down the metallic tang in my throat. Wait for my signal. When it's time, I'll let you know. The location is my apartment, and the time will be soon. Done, Frankie said without hesitation. I'll be waiting for the call. My crew is on standby 24/7. I hung up. The apartment fell silent again, the only sound my own labored breathing. I put down the phone, my gaze sweeping across the living room. The TV was now a black, silent rectangle. The empty space, the open bedroom door, the gaping briefcase on the floor, they were all mouths, open in a silent, mocking laugh. Chloe, Julian, you stood in the spotlight and forged your golden reputations for my blood. Now, it's your turn to feel what it's like to be roasted over the fires of public opinion. I picked up the cold debit card, clutching it in my fist. Its plastic edge dug painfully into my palm. This wasn't money. This was my last weapon. This was the spark I would use to light the fires of hell. Outside, the city lights glowed, a cold, indifferent backdrop to a night of lies and betrayal. And in my eyes, beneath the frozen, deadened surface, a tiny blue flame had just begun to burn. A flame hot enough to incinerate everything. The following days were cloaked in a strange, oppressive calm, the kind that precedes a hurricane. Chloe came home. She still carried the faint, expensive scent of the gala, mingled with the ghost of Julian's cologne. Her face was flushed with a strange mix of excitement and fatigue, her eyes unervingly bright. "Ethan," she said, setting down her designer clutch and walking over to the sofa. Her tone was deliberately gentle, but it couldn't hide an undercurrent of anxiety. "You look terrible. Are you feeling sick again? Did you take your medicine?" She reached out to feel my forehead. I turned my head slightly, avoiding her touch. The movement was small, but it was a clear rejection. I looked at her, my expression blank, empty, as if staring at a piece of furniture. Chloe's hand froze midair. The gentle concern on her face hardened for a split second, replaced by a flash of irritation. But she quickly recalibrated, forcing an even more worried expression. "Ethan, don't be like this. I know you're upset about the surgery money, but I didn't have a choice." Her voice rose, laced with a defensive, wounded tone. Julian had this major charity initiative, and they were short on funding to get it started. He came to me, begging, said they were just $500,000 short. So many children were counting on that money. What was I supposed to do? Just let those poor kids lose all hope? As she spoke, her eyes reddened, tears welling on command. "I know it was your money for the surgery, but I wasn't thinking. Julian said his company would have it back to me in a week tops. He promised. I even asked him again and again. He swore it wouldn't be a problem. Besides," she added, her voice taking on a righteous tone, "I was thinking of you too. A donation like that. It's good karma. Maybe it will convince God to cure you." She grew more animated, leaning forward to grab my hand. "Ethan, believe me, just 1 week. The money will be back, and your surgery won't be delayed. Please, don't be mad at me. Everything I do is for this family, for you." A tear finally fell, landing hot on the back of my hand. The heat of it was so fake it made my stomach turn. I continued to watch her in silence. I watched her perform. I watched her twist a calculated act of betrayal into a necessary evil for the greater good. I watched her paint Julian's empty promises as my only salvation. I watched her expertly wield her tears and the classic, "It was for your own good," excuse, trying once again to dismantle my defenses. 1 week? Julian's promise? A cold, bitter laugh echoed in my mind. The money wouldn't be back even after I was a pile of ashes. "Okay," I finally said. Just 1 word. My voice was a dry, emotionless rasp. Chloe's crying stopped short. She looked up, her tear-filled eyes wide with uncertainty. "Ethan, I'm tired," I said, closing my eyes and leaning my head back against the sofa. I refused to look at her any longer. "I need to sleep." Chloe opened her mouth and closed it. She looked at my dead, impassive face and seemed to decide against saying more. She bit her lip, a flicker of emotions crossing her face before settling on a look of secret, profound relief. In her mind, my silence was just another surrender. Another time she had successfully convinced me. "Okay, you get some rest," she said, her voice once again gentle and caring. "I'll get you a glass of water." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, the sharp clicks of her heels on the hardwood floor echoing a rhythm completely devoid of guilt. I kept my eyes closed, listening to her footsteps fade. The fire in my chest, banked by a cold resolve, burned even hotter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Frankie. 2 words. Ready when you are. Good. When Chloe returned with the water, I was breathing evenly, my body still, as if in a deep sleep. She placed the glass on the coffee table, watched me for a moment, then tiptoed away. A moment later, I heard her hushed voice from the bedroom, the tone giddy and flirtatious. Yeah, he's asleep. It's fine. Don't worry. I remained perfectly still, but the corner of my mouth twitched downward into a cold, sharp line. She thinks the storm has passed. She thinks I'm the same fool she's played for years, so easily placated by cheap tears and cheaper lies. No, Chloe. This is just the calm before the end of the world. A few days later, on a seemingly ordinary afternoon, I was lying in bed, the curtains drawn tight, plunging the room into a dim twilight. The nightstand was cluttered with pill bottles. I was coughing violently, the sound wet and broken, each breath a new agony that tore at the tumor deep in my chest. My forehead was slick with a cold sweat, my skin a sickly, gray color. Chloe sat in a chair by the bed, scrolling through her phone. Her brow was furrowed, her thumb flying across the screen as if she were dealing with something urgent, a hint of annoyance on her lips. My coughing was clearly getting on her nerves. Cough, 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 cough. The spasms grew more intense, my body curling into a fetal position, my hands clutching at my side. Chloe finally looked up, her patience gone. There was no concern in her eyes, only irritation. Jesus, Ethan, can you keep it down? You're going to cough up a lung, she snapped, instinctively leaning away as if I were contagious. Didn't you take your medicine? Why are you still like this? It's so annoying. Just then, my phone rang, its shrill tone shattering the quiet of the dim room. Chloe jumped, glaring at me. Wheezing, I reached a trembling hand to the nightstand. The screen lit up, Dr. Hansen Oncology. I answered it, and I also hit the speakerphone button. Ethan, is that you? Dr. Hansen's urgent voice exploded into the room, heavy with professional gravity and undeniable authority. This is Dr. Hansen. I've been worried since you canceled the surgery. I just got your scan result from the other day. The situation is not good. Not good at all. His words were sharp and rapid fire. The tumor is growing much faster than we anticipated. There are clear signs of metastasis. Ethan, this isn't a joke. You need to be admitted immediately. Right now. We can't wait any longer. If you wait, it won't matter what surgery we do. Not even a miracle can save you. Do you hear me? Get to the hospital now. Every word was a hammer blow, striking the silence in the room. The air grew thick, heavy. I gasped for breath, a ragged, wheezing sound coming from my throat, as if I didn't even have the strength to speak. Chloe's thumb froze on her phone screen. She looked up, her eyes darting from me to the phone on speaker, and in the dim light, the color drained from her face, leaving it a ghostly white. For the first time, I saw a genuine fear in her beautiful eyes. But it wasn't fear for me. It was fear of the consequences, the utter loss of control that Dr. Hansen's words, not even a miracle can save you, implied. I, cough, cough. I rasped into the phone, my voice a frail, desperate whisper. Dr. Hansen, the money. It's not. The money. Dr. Hansen's voice boomed, filled with incredulous fury. Ethan, what are you thinking? Is money more important than your life? Where is your wife? Put her on the phone. Tell her to get you to the hospital, now. His shouts felt like a physical whip, lashing across Chloe's pale face. She shot up from her chair, as if she'd been electrocuted, her lips trembling. She looked at me, her eyes wild with a new, frantic panic. She opened her mouth, as if to make an excuse, to once again mention Julian's promise of 1 week, but the raw, terrifying finality in the doctor's voice choked the words in her throat. I turned my head with great effort, my hollow eyes sweeping past her terrified face, and slowly, painstakingly, lifted a trembling hand. I pointed to the large, framed photo on the wall opposite the bed, our wedding picture. Chloe! My voice was a barely audible, ragged whisper. Dr. Hansen said, you need to take me. The words were cut off by another violent, gut-wrenching coughing fit. My body convulsed. as if it were about to break apart. Chloe stood frozen, trembling like a leaf in a winter storm. She looked at my agonized, curled form, then at the phone still broadcasting the doctor's frantic shouts, then at the smiling, happy woman in the wedding photo. The terror finally consumed her. She spun around and practically fled the room, her heels clattering in a panicked, uneven rhythm as she ran for the front door. Slam! The front door slammed shut. The room was suddenly, blessedly silent. All that remained was the sound of my own quiet coughs, and Dr. Hanson's voice still coming from the speaker. Hello? Hello? Ethan? Mrs. Miller? Are you there, Ethan? I stopped coughing. My body uncurled. I reached over, picked up the phone, turned off the speaker, and put it to my ear. Dr. Hanson, I said. My voice was still hoarse, but the weakness was gone, replaced by a cold, absolute clarity. It's me. Thank you. That was perfect. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Ethan, are you okay? He asked, his voice filled with confusion. I'm not dead yet, I said, a humorless smile touching my lips. Just like we planned. Thank you. You can start spreading the word now. Condition rapidly deteriorating, life hanging by a thread. The sooner, the better. The more people who hear it, the better. All right, Dr. Hanson's voice was grim, heavy with a complicated mix of emotions that finally settled into a deep sigh. I understand. Ethan, take care of yourself. I will. I ended the call. The room was completely quiet. In the dim light, I sat up, leaning against the headboard. The image of the dying man was gone. My face was still pale, but my hollow eyes now burned with two dark, intense flames. I picked up my other phone, a cheap burner, unlocked it, found Frankie's number. My finger was steady as I hit send. The message had only one word, a command as cold as iron and blood. Go. Night fell like a shroud of black ink. The city's distant hum was muffled by the thick curtains, leaving the apartment in an eerie silence. But the living room was as bright as an operating theater. Several high-powered production lights stood on tripods, casting a cold, sharp, clinical glare on a single hospital-style bed set up in the middle of the room. The air smelled of antiseptic and the faint, metallic scent of camera equipment. I lay on the narrow bed, under a thin, worn-out blanket. Frankie's makeup artist, a guy named Leo who was a true master of his craft, had just finished his work. The man in the reflection was a stranger, gaunt, skeletal, with sunken eyes and hollow cheeks. His skin was a waxy, lifeless yellow, artfully shadowed to look sickly and damp with a perpetual cold sweat. His lips were chapped and pale, slightly parted, each breath appearing shallow and labored. Beneath the thin blanket, my body was a frail, still landscape. This was no longer me. This was the physical embodiment of a man consumed by disease and betrayal, hovering on the edge of death. A living, breathing, visceral symbol of tragedy. Frankie, dressed in a black utility vest, stood behind a large camera on a jib arm, his expression focused and grim, like a predator about to strike. He peered at me through the viewfinder, his eyes sharp. Ethan, you're set, he said, his voice low but clear in the quiet room. Lighting, final check, background screen on standby. Lights are good. Screen is ready. In the corner, a massive high-definition monitor connected to a laptop glowed with a black screen. All right. Frankie took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room. His crew, the lighting tech, the sound guy, the production assistant, were all silent, poised. Going live in 10. 10. 9. Frankie's hand signals were sharp and precise. 3, 2, 1. We're live. Frankie chopped his hand down through the air. In that same instant, on the phone connected to the professional streaming setup, the red live icon lit up. A shocking, explosive title appeared on the platform's front page. A husband's final plea. My wife donated my surgery money. This is goodbye. The moment the stream went live, the viewer count exploded. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. The numbers scrolled upwards so fast they were a blur. The chat feed erupted like a broken dam, a flood of text instantly overwhelming the screen. OMG, is this real? What does that title mean? She donated his surgery money. What's wrong with him? He looks like he's dying. Why is the background black? What is going on? The camera was tight on my face. Under the combined power of the professional lighting and makeup, I was death personified. I slowly, painfully moved my eyes toward the lens. My gaze was hollow, numb, filled with the dead stillness of someone who has been completely broken by pain and despair. Hello, everyone. My lips barely moved. My voice was a faint whisper, punctuated by ragged breaths and a weak cough, each word an immense effort. My name is Ethan Miller, and I think I'm about to die. That sentence was a lit match in a room full of gasoline. The chat went insane. Stay with us, man. What happened? What about the money? Where's his wife? Where is she? Another coughing fit seized me, more violent this time. I curled up, my hands clutching the thin blanket, my body trembling. After a few seconds, as if completely spent, I collapsed back onto the pillows, my face an even more ghastly shade of gray. I'm sorry, I whispered to the camera, forcing a smile that was more hideous than a grimace. I didn't mean to worry you. I just wanted to say a few last words about my wife, Chloe. The instant her name left my lips, Frankie shot a signal to the tech controlling the background screen. Whoosh. The massive screen behind me burst to life, its brilliant light banishing the darkness. On the screen was a crystal-clear, high-definition clip from the heart of the city gala. The spotlights were dazzling. Chloe, in her shimmering royal blue gown, her face a mask of perfect, modest joy, pressed against the side of the handsome, tuxedo-clad Julian Vance. They were impossibly close. Julian's hand was planted firmly on her waist. They held the giant ceremonial check together. The number $500,000 was a bloody, glaring wound on the white background. It was a silent slap in the face to every single person watching. The gala host's voice, cracking with manufactured emotion, roared from the high-quality speakers set up in the room. $500,000. Let's hear it one more time from Ms. Chloe Evans and Mr. Julian Vance. They are as beautiful on the inside as they are on the out. The pride of our city, true real-life angels. Angels. The thunderous applause from the clip filled the room. The video froze on a close-up of Chloe's shining moment. Her coy, please smile as the host called her an angel. In this context, her smile was grotesque, obscene. The entire livestream chat fell silent for a full second. The only sound was the recorded applause from the gala. The next moment, the chat feed became a volcano. Holy Fing SD. $500,000? On the check? That woman, Chloe, that's his wife. A real-life angel. A real-life demon more like. She took her husband's life-saving money to donate it, with her side piece. What a monster. She's trying to kill him. Who's the guy next to her? That's the affair. Scumbags. I'm shaking with rage. He's dying, and she's playing philanthropist? How can a person be this shameless? Call the police. Dox them. Ruin their lives. Angry, capitalized text filled the screen like a volley of poison arrows. Rage, curses, disbelief, a million volatile emotions exploded in the chat window. I lay under the cold lights, a specimen on display, a corpse waiting for the morgue. The camera captured my ashen face, my hollow eyes staring blankly at the ceiling as if my soul had already departed. Tears, real and hot, began to well up and stream from my sunken eyes, carving paths down my waxy cheeks and soaking into the white pillowcase. She's so kind. I cried to the camera, my voice shattered and thick with emotion, each word a testament to my broken heart. So kind. She'd rather sacrifice me to brighten the world for others. I struggled to lift a skeletal hand and pointed a trembling finger at the frozen image of Chloe's smiling face on the screen behind me. She's an angel. The word angel was the detonator. Brighten the world for her boyfriend. You mean sacrifice you. She's murdering you, Ethan. She's not an angel. She's a goddamn monster. Don't cry, man. We've got you. We won't let her win. Everyone, donate. We can't let this man die. Yes, donate. Crowdfund. Save Ethan and slap those two scumbags in the face. Rockets, sports cars, fireworks. The platform's most expensive virtual gifts exploded across the screen, a constant, dazzling barrage of light and color. The heart icons, a form of microdonation, felt like a blizzard, completely obscuring the video feed. The stream's popularity ranking shot into the stratosphere, breaking one platform record after another. The viewer count had already soared past 1 million and was still climbing at a terrifying rate. Hashtag Chloe the Killer Wife, hashtag Vance the Homewrecker, hashtag Save Ethan. A series of shocking hashtags, born from the live stream, caught fire and spread across the internet, instantly landing at the top of Twitter's trending list. The media nuke had been detonated. Its target, the man and woman who had tried to build their shining legacy on the foundation of my death. I lay under the cold lights, feeling the tidal wave of rage and the overwhelming surge of support from the other side of the screen. The tears continued to flow down the carefully constructed contours of my death mask. But no one could see, deep within those tear-filled, hollow eyes, the flash of a cold, hard, razor-sharp glint of steel. The storm was just beginning. Chloe, Julian, enjoy the fame you bought with my life. The live stream was a raging inferno. The chat feed was no longer a flood. It was a sea of molten lava. Layer upon layer of capitalized, red text curses and threats of righteous fury threatened to crack the screen. The virtual GIFs became a constant, blinding aurora of digital explosions. The viewer count ticked past 10 million. The platform's servers groaned under the strain. Hashtag Wife from Hell. Hashtag Julian Vance's Over Party. Hashtag Ethan's Fight. 3 blood-red hashtags were welded to the top of the national trending list, each marked with a flaming, exploding icon. Dox them. We need to dox them. Drag these monsters into the light. Chloe Evans, creative director at Vivid Media Group. I found her LinkedIn. It's her. Julian Vance, founder of Vance Capital Partners. That's him, the scumbag. Vivid Media? Vance Capital? Let's go. Bomb their Google reviews. Crash their websites. Already reported them to the IRS, the SEC, every regulatory body I can think of. Breaking news from a gossip site. Julian Vance is married. His wife just had their 2nd kid. Oh my God. He's a cheating scumbag and she's a homewrecker. They deserve prison. Ethan, hang in there. We're raising the money for you. You have to live to see them burn. The digital atom bomb had gone off, and a shockwave was leveling the online world. In seconds, the furious online mob had unearthed every detail of Chloe and Julian's lives, their jobs, their social circles, their histories, and laid them bare for the world to see and to judge. My phone, the one broadcasting my final moments to the world, suddenly began to flash erratically. A name pulsed on the caller ID. Chloe. Her cell. The ringtone was a shrill, piercing shriek, a pathetic sound against the roar of the digital mob. Frankie, standing behind the camera, shot me a sharp, questioning look. I lay under the pale lights, a wax figure in a macabre museum. Only my eyes moved, slowly, coldly, turning toward the vibrating phone on the nightstand. The screen's light illuminated my bloodless face. Chloe's name danced desperately against the backdrop of the scrolling, hate-filled chat. I didn't move. I let it ring, a useless, desperate cry in the storm. Finally, it went to voicemail. Less than 5 seconds later, it started ringing again. The same name. The ringing more frantic this time, as if the person on the other end was being consumed by terror. I remained silent, a true dying man, my soul already gone. Cough, cough, cough. I let out a perfectly timed, gut-wrenching coughing fit, my body curling up, my knuckles white as I gripped the blanket. My agony instantly triggered a fresh wave of fury in the chat, and even more venomous curses directed at Chloe and Julian. The ringing stopped again, then started a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th. Each call was the last cry of a dying animal. Each ring was punctuated by my pained gasps and the escalating rage of millions of strangers. On the 6th call, I coughed so hard it looked like I might pass out, my body shaking violently under the blanket. Frankie gave a decisive nod to his assistant. The assistant strode over, picked up the phone, and with a swipe of his thumb, didn't answer it. He powered it off. Silence, except for the sound of a world screaming for justice. Chloe's world imploded the moment she heard the cold, robotic voice say, "The number you have dialed has been turned off. She was slumped on the huge, cold leather sofa in the presidential office of Vance Capital Partners. Hours earlier, this room had been a symbol of power and illicit romance. Now it was a tomb. The phone slipped from her trembling hand, clattering onto the polished obsidian floor. The screen spiderwebbed with cracks, a perfect map of her shattered life. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights sparkled. To Chloe, they looked like millions of malevolent, watching eyes. The screenshots, the curses, the tags, hashtag wife from hell, hashtag monster, hashtag murderer, crawled out of the broken phone screen like venomous snakes, wrapping around her throat, squeezing until she couldn't breathe. No, it's not like that. It's not. She whimpered, clawing at her perfectly styled hair, her voice the sound of a trapped animal. Mascara ran down her face in two black, pathetic tracks. The money. We were going to pay it back. Julian promised. She looked up as if grabbing a last, flimsy piece of driftwood, her bloodshot eyes locking on the man behind the desk. Julian looked no better. His expensive custom suit jacket was thrown carelessly over a chair, his tie ripped loose. His usually perfect hair was a mess, his forehead gleaming with sweat. He paced like a caged tiger, his frantic steps muffled by the plush carpet. His own phone's call log was a sea of red. Missed calls from board members, investors, bank managers, and even his wife, the one who had just given birth to their second child. He couldn't answer any of them. Promised? I promised you nothing. Julian finally roared, stopping his pacing to glare at her, his eyes filled with a venomous hatred. His voice was a high-pitched, ugly thing. Chloe, look what you've done. Look. He grabbed a heavy crystal ashtray from his desk and hurled it at the wall. Crash. It shattered against the expensive wallpaper, sending shards flying. Chloe screamed, shrinking into the sofa. That dying bastard. How'd he know? How'd he set up a live stream? Huh? Julian was losing his mind, the veins in his neck bulging. He hired a professional crew. Where did he get the money for that? I don't know. I really don't know. Chloe sobbed, completely incoherent. He was dying. He had given up. Given up. He's trying to drag us to hell with him. Julian slammed his hands on his desk, his handsome face twisted into a demonic snarl. Wife from hell. Cheating scumbag. Homewrecker. Murderers. Do you hear what they're saying online? Our company websites are down. The phone lines are flooded. The IRS, the SEC, the goddamn Better Business Bureau, they're all getting calls. My investors just pulled out. The bank is calling my loans. I'm finished. It's over. And it's all your fault. You stupid, toxic bitch. His words were a whip, flaying her raw. Her last defense crumbled, and she collapsed into hysterical sobs. What do we do? What do we do, Julian? I didn't want this. I was just trying to help you. To secure our future. Our future. Julian let out a wild, choked laugh, his eyes filled with pure, unadulterated loathing. Listen to me, Chloe. There's no us. There never was. Now you get out of here. Go back to your dying husband. You get on your knees. You beg him. You tell him it was all a misunderstanding. Tell him you discussed the donation with him. Tell him we're innocent. Go. Do it now, or we are both dead. He lunged at her, grabbing her arm and yanking her off the sofa like a rag doll. He shoved her violently toward the door. Go. Now. Beg him. And if he says no, you can die on his doorstep for all I care. Do you hear me? Chloe stumbled, her ankle twisting in her heel. The pain in her arm was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the pain of seeing the raw, undisguised contempt in his eyes. In that instant, she understood. She had never been anything more than a beautiful, useful object to him. The moment trouble hit, he wouldn't hesitate to throw her to the wolves. A wave of pure terror washed over her. She forgot to cry. She just stared at his contorted face. Then, like a puppet with its strings cut, she stumbled out of the office. As the door swung shut, she heard his final, hysterical roar. Go fix it, you worthless bitch. The elevator's descent made her stomach lurch. She burst out of the building into the cold night air, the wind cutting through her thin dress like 1,000 tiny needles. She stood on the curb, a ghost trying to hail a cab. Car after car sped past. The drivers saw her smeared makeup, her wild eyes, her utter dishevelment, and either ignored her or sped up. The news, the pictures, her face, It had all gone viral. She was infamous. Look, it's her, that horrible woman. Ugh, don't stop. So gross. Trying to kill her husband. She has some nerve being out in public. The whispers and stares were invisible blows. Chloe buried her face in her hands. Shame and fear making her feel colder than the wind. Finally, a beat-up old sedan pulled over. The driver, an old man with gray hair, looked her over with weary eyes and just nodded toward the back seat. Chloe scrambled in like a drowning woman grabbing a life raft. The car smelled of stale cigarettes and old vinyl. "Where to?" the old man asked, his voice a gravelly rasp. The residences at Belmont Harbor." She stammered. The name of her home, her sanctuary, now sounding like the entrance to hell. The driver said nothing more. The old car groaned as it pulled into the sparse late-night traffic. Chloe huddled in the back, her body shaking uncontrollably. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. The street lights streaked past the window, blurring into long, pale ribbons in her tear-filled eyes, like funeral banners guiding her to her doom. What could she do? Beg him, the man she had left to die? Would he even see her? Would he listen? Would he forgive her? The word forgive was so absurd it was almost laughable. The live stream, the frozen image of her smiling face, the global outrage. He had burned every bridge. He wanted her ruined. A tide of absolute despair rose up and swallowed her whole. She covered her face and began to sob, the sound raw and hopeless in the cramped, smelly car. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his tired eyes showing no sympathy, only a kind of weary resignation. He turned on the radio. A late-night talk show host was reading a listener's email. And so, to truly love someone is not to possess them, but to support them. And once trust is broken, trying to fix it is like trying to find a lost item on a sunken ship. Sunken ship. The words were the final straw. Chloe broke down completely, her cries echoing in the back of the dingy cab, a soundtrack of terror, regret, and the absolute certainty that she was doomed. But her regret had come too late. It was worthless. The car sped through the silent streets, getting closer and closer to the place she once called home and now knew was hell. When the taxi stopped in front of her building, Chloe was making small, hiccuping sounds of despair. She fumbled in her purse, pulled out a crumpled bill, and shoved it at the driver without looking, scrambling out of the car. The condo complex was quiet, the manicured lawns and neat brick buildings cast in an eerie yellow glow from the security lights. Every dark window looked like a judgmental eye staring down at her. She clutched her thin dress, head down, and scurried across the courtyard like a thief. The elevator ride was agonizing, the glowing floor numbers mocking her frantic heartbeat. Ding! The doors opened. The hallway light flickered on, illuminating the familiar number on her apartment door. She stood before it, her body racked with shivers of cold and fear. She raised a hand, her fingers like ice, but she couldn't bring herself to knock. What was behind that door? The skeletal, dying man with hate in his eyes? Or something worse, a cold, damning silence. The memory of Julian's snarling face, of his absolute abandonment, of the tidal wave of public hatred, of losing everything. It all came crashing down. The terror was so immense it overpowered everything else. She took a breath, like a diver about to plunge into a dark abyss, and began to hammer on the door with all her strength. Bang! 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 The sound echoed in the silent hallway like a funeral bell. "Ethan, open the door. It's me." "Chloe," she screamed, her voice breaking. "Please, open the door. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Ethan, I'm begging you. Open the door." Inside, there was only silence. The massive production lights in the living room were off, replaced by a single, dim floor lamp in the corner. The expensive camera equipment was being quietly dismantled and packed away into hardshell cases. Frankie's crew was efficient, cleaning up the battlefield with minimal noise. I was still on a hospital bed, the blanket pulled up to my chest. The ghoulish makeup hadn't been removed yet, making my face look even more spectral in the dim light. But my eyes were no longer hollow. They burned with a cold, terrifying calm. A professional headset was on a nightstand connected to a soundboard. Through the headphones, I could hear Chloe's desperate cries and frantic pounding with perfect clarity. Bang, bang, bang. "Ethan, Open the door. Please. I was wrong. It was all my fault. Just let me explain. Please. Her voice was the sound of utter, cornered terror. Frankie clicked the latches shut on a heavy lens case. He looked over at me, his expression unreadable. I slowly lifted a hand and pulled one ear cup off. Chloe's screams became louder, more piercing. Frankie, I said, my voice quiet, heavy with the exhaustion that follows a great battle. You guys can pack up and head out the back. Thank you. For everything. Frankie just nodded. He gestured to his crew, and they moved even faster, even more quietly. I put the headset back on and leaned back, closing my eyes, letting her desperate cries and the sound of her fists against the door become nothing more than distant, meaningless noise. Ethan, stop. Please open the door. Julian lied to me. He said he'd pay it back in a week. Stop. He threw me away. I have nothing now. I only have you, Ethan. Please, just give me one more chance. I swear. I'll take care of you. We can start over. Sob. Her screams dissolved into incoherent, pathetic begging, a messy mix of blaming Julian and making cheap promises to me. The pounding stopped, replaced by the dull, heavy thud of her body hitting the door. Thump, thump, weak, desperate. Through the headphones, all I could hear now was the sound of her ragged, exhausted sobs. Frankie's crew finished. All the gear was packed. He gave me one last, long look, his eyes full of 100 unasked questions. Then, without a word, he led his men through the kitchen and out the service door. The apartment was finally completely silent, except for the faint, almost inaudible sound of weeping from the other side of the door, an echo from the edge of a personal hell. I kept my eyes closed, unmoving. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. An hour. Eventually, the sound from outside the door stopped completely. Silence. Absolute silence descended. I slowly opened my eyes. In the dim light, they shone with a startling intensity, like two cold, distant stars. All the pain, all the grief, it was gone. There was nothing left but ice. I threw off the blanket and sat up. My movements were slow, stiff but steady. I walked to the large picture window and, with one sharp pull, yanked open the heavy curtains. Outside, the first pale, gray light of dawn was breaking on the horizon. The long, insane night was over. A new day was beginning. And for me, Ethan Miller, my surgery was just getting started. The faint morning light painted the cold living room in pale, ethereal gold. I stood by the window. I hadn't slept. The theatrical makeup on my face was starting to crease. The pain in my side was real, a dull, grinding blade, a welcome anchor to reality. The burner phone in my pocket vibrated. It was a text from Dr. Hansen, brief and to the point. Public opinion is overwhelming. The crowdfunding link is flooded. The amount raised is significant, far more than needed. The surgical team is on standby, awaiting your word. I swiped the message away without replying. My gaze fell on the front door. It was silent. Last night's desperate screams and pathetic pleas felt like a distant, faded dream, evaporated by the morning sun. Was she gone? Or huddled in a corner of the hallway, like a stray dog? It didn't matter. I walked to the bathroom. The man in the mirror was haggard, but his eyes were sharp as a hawk's. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face, washing away the grease paint and the fake tear tracks. The shock of the cold was bracing. I changed into clean clothes. My body was weak, but my movements were imbued with a new, resolute strength. I picked up my debit card from the table. It was no longer a pathetic collection of my last few dollars. It was now the repository for an astonishing amount of public goodwill. It wasn't a lifeline anymore. It was a key. Without a backward glance at the apartment that had become a stage for lies and betrayal, I opened the door. The hallway was empty. The cold morning air smelled clean. There was no sign she had ever been there. As if last night was just a phantom I'd imagined. Good. A clean break. I calmly locked the door and walked toward the elevator. The sound of my own footsteps was steady and clear, each one a farewell to a rotten, decayed world. The hospital smelled of antiseptic as always, but this time the scent was clean, final. Dr. Hansen was waiting for me in the surgical admissions area. He looked like he hadn't slept either, but his eyes were bright, a mixture of sympathy and determination. He hurried over as I walked in. "Ethan," he said, his eyes quickly scanning me. "How are you feeling? Are we ready to begin?" I asked, my voice even. "Dr." Hansen held my gaze for a long moment, as if he could see the raging currents beneath my calm surface. He finally just nodded, his expression firm. "Everything is ready. I've assembled the best team. We can start immediately." An orderly brought a gurney. I lay down on the cool, crisp sheets. The fluorescent lights of the hallway ceiling slid past above me, a blur of white. The heavy automatic doors to the operating theater swung shut, sealing me off from the outside world. The blinding, shadowless light of the surgical lamp bore down on me. The anesthesiologist's voice was gentle, distant. "All right, Ethan, just relax. We're going to get started now." I felt a cold liquid enter the fore in my arm. My consciousness began to drift, sinking into a warm, quiet sea. In the final second before I went under, one clear, sharp thought cut through the fog. "Chloe, Julian, my surgery has begun, and the gates of your hell have just opened." Consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from a deep, murky water. My eyelids were heavy, glued shut. It took a monumental effort to pry them open. Bright white light, the smell of antiseptic, and a strange, ethereal lightness. The gnawing, constant pain that had lived under my ribs for months was gone. In its place was a deep, numb ache, the feeling of a space that had been violently emptied and then stitched back together, learning to exist in a new way. "He's awake," a calm voice. I turned my head. "Dr." Hansen was there, looking tired but pleased, holding a chart. "The surgery was a complete success," he said, looking up at me with a relieved smile. "We got the entire tumor. Clean margins. It was a long procedure, but the outcome was the best we could have hoped for. Congratulations, Ethan. You made it. You made it." The words landed with a gentle weight. A tiny, imperceptible warmth began to meld a corner of the glacier that had encased my heart. "Thank you." I rasped, my throat raw. "Just rest now," he said, patting my arm gently. "Recovery is your only job." A nurse came in. The room was quiet, peaceful, marked only by the steady, rhythmic beeping of the monitors. When the nurse came back later, I found my voice. "Could you please hand me my phone?" She hesitated, glanced at my stable vitals, and finally retrieved my personal phone from the nightstand drawer. The screen lit up. At the same moment, the phone began to vibrate violently, a cascade of notifications flooding the screen. I tapped the top one, from a major news outlet. The bold, black headline hit me with the force of a final judgment. Vivid Media Group terminates creative director Chloe Evans. Effective immediately, the summary read. In light of recent events and personal conduct that has caused significant reputational damage, the board of directors has voted to terminate Ms. Evans's employment. The company states her actions were her own and do not reflect their values. I swiped to the next notification, from a financial news wire. Vance Capital Partners implodes amid scandal. Founder Julian Vance ousted by board, the summary. Following a devastating public relations crisis, multiple key investors have withdrawn all funding from Vance Capital Partners, causing a catastrophic liquidity failure. In an emergency meeting this morning, the board voted unanimously to remove founder and CEO Julian Vance from all positions. I kept scrolling. A local news follow-up. Angel donor Chloe Evans vanishes. Neighbors report she fled in the middle of the night, and another, this one from a tabloid, complete with a blurry, chaotic photo of Julian, his face contorted in rage, trying to smash a reporter's camera outside a lavish mansion. One by one, the push notifications painted a clear, brutal picture of their downfall. Chloe, disgraced, fired, a pariah, vanished into the night. Everything she had built, her career, her image, her social standing, incinerated in a single evening. Julian, cast down from his ivory tower into the gutter. His empire crumbled. His name a synonym for disgrace, his future a ruin. This was the end. I scrolled through the headlines with a strange detachment. There was no joy, no thrill of victory, just a profound, bone-deep calm, the kind of quiet that follows a blizzard, when the world is buried under a blanket of white, and everything is still. They had paid the price. A price as steep and as absolute as the one they had tried to make me pay. And that was enough. The sunlight streamed through the window blinds, casting warm stripes across the clean, white sheets. The dull ache from my incision was a reminder that I was alive. I systematically deleted every photo of Chloe, every news alert, every trace of my old life. Then, I turned off the phone. The room was quiet again, the steady beep of the monitor, the sound of my own heart, beating in new, steady rhythm. I took a deep, slow breath. The air was cold, sterile, and smelled like freedom. It was all over, and my new life was just beginning.